The sea wind brushed gently across the glass doors of the coastal Eden resort, bringing with it the faint scent of salt and jasmine. It was close to midnight, and the lobby glowed with soft amber light. The world outside was silent, except for the waves breaking far away, steady and eternal. Behind the front desk sat Emma Rivera, her posture straight but her eyes distant. Watching the reflection of the sea through the glass panels, Emma had worked at the resort for almost a year. She was 22, quiet, polite, and invisible in the way only those who never demand attention can be. Her hair was dark and always tied back neatly, her uniform perfectly pressed, her smile small and sincere. She had learned early that silence could be safer than words. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 17. After that, her Aunt Clara had taken her in, a kind woman who believed that hard work and humility could heal anything. Emma believed it too, or at least tried to. Every night she took the late shift, because she liked the quiet hours when guests disappeared to their rooms and she could hear the distant hum of the sea. That night, the lobby was empty. The ticking clock above the desk was the only sound. She leaned back, stretching her fingers, when the revolving doors turned slowly and a gust of wind swept in. A man stepped inside, tall, wearing a dark suit that looked too expensive for this sleepy coastal town. His arrival broke the stillness like a drop in calm water. Emma straightened immediately. She hadn't seen him before. He didn't look like the usual guest tourists in sandals and linen shirts or old couples chasing quiet sunsets. He looked out of place, like someone who had walked out of another world. His hair was short and dark with a hint of gray at the temples. His jawline was sharp, his eyes unreadable, deep gray that seemed to catch the light and hold it. He approached the desk, pulling a black wallet from his pocket. His movements were slow, controlled, as if he measured every step. "Good evening," Emma said softly, her voice careful. Professional. He looked at her for a second longer than necessary before replying. "Good evening. I have a reservation. Name's Nathan Cross." She typed the name quickly, her fingers steady even though her heartbeat wasn't. She'd heard the name before everyone had. Nathan Cross, the tech billionaire who built one of the largest data companies in the country. He was often in magazines or on the news. She remembered seeing him once on a TV in the staff lounge, standing on a stage, speaking about innovation and future markets. But now, here he was, standing right in front of her. "Yes, Mr. Cross," she said quietly. "We have you in the Ocean View suite. May I have your ID, please?" He handed it to her with a small nod. "Thank you, Emma," he said, glancing at her name tag. His voice was low, smooth, but carried a weight that made her nervous for reasons she couldn't name. She verified the details and handed back his card. "Everything is ready for your stay. If you need anything, I'll let you know," he said, his gaze lingering on her face for a brief second before looking away. He turned toward the elevator, but halfway there, he stopped. His phone slipped from his hand, landing face down on the marble floor.
Oh.
Before he could bend down, Emma had already rushed around the counter. "Oh, wait, I'll get it." Their hands touched as they both reached for the phone. The contact was quick, almost accidental, but it felt like an electric current shot through her. He paused, looking up at her, and for the first time that night, his expression softened. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome," she replied, almost whispering. When he walked away again, Emma stood there for a moment, I'm sure why she felt like she'd forgotten how to breathe. The next few nights passed quietly. Emma didn't expect to see him again. Important people, like him, usually stayed hidden in their suites or attended private meetings. But 3 days later, near the end of her shift, she looked up to find him standing at the counter again. He wasn't wearing a suit this time.
Ice.
Instead, a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His hair looked slightly damp, as if he had just returned from a walk by the beach. "Good evening, Mr. Cross," she greeted politely, her voice calm, though her pulse quickened. He smiled faintly. "You can call me Nathan," she hesitated. "I'm not sure if that's appropriate." "Maybe not," he said, leaning a little closer, "but it sounds better when you say it." She felt her cheeks warm, but pretended not to notice. "How can I help you tonight, Mr. Nathan? I was wondering if the restaurant is still open. It closes at 10, but I can ask the chef to prepare something for you if you'd like." "What would you prefer?" "What do you eat when you finish your shift?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "Me, yes. You." She hesitated, confused but honest. Usually nothing. Sometimes soup from the staff kitchen. He nodded slowly, then smiled, a rare, genuine one. Then have dinner with me. It seems unfair that I get to eat alone while the person who keeps this place running goes hungry. Her heart skipped. I can't. I'm still on duty. When do you finish? Midnight. I'll wait. You don't have to, she said softly. I know. That's why I want to. When the clock finally struck 12, Emma found him sitting at the corner table of the closed restaurant, a single candle flickering between them. The chef had stayed back at Nathan's request and prepared something simple: grilled fish, vegetables, and 2 glasses of white wine. Emma almost didn't go. She stood outside the glass doors for several minutes, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't used to attention, especially not from someone like him. But curiosity, and something else she couldn't name, pulled her inside. Nathan looked up when she entered. You came, he said quietly. Just for a few minutes, she replied. Sitting down carefully, the conversation started awkwardly, full of pauses and half-smiles. But after a while, it began to flow. Talked about the town she grew up in, about how she loved the ocean but hated storms. He talked about his childhood, how he grew up in Chicago, poor, raised by a single mother who taught him to fight for everything he had. They laughed softly when the candle flickered out, and Nathan leaned forward to relight it. For a brief second, the flame's glow painted his face in gold, and Emma realized he wasn't as cold as he looked. He was tired, maybe lonely. When they finished eating, he didn't let her stand right away. Stay a little longer, he said, his voice gentle. It's rare to have someone talk to me without wanting something. You have everything, she said quietly. What could anyone want from you? Peace, he replied. And sometimes I'd give everything for that. Her eyes softened. Maybe peace isn't something you buy. Maybe it's something you find when you stop looking. He smiled faintly. You're wiser than you think, Emma. She shook her head. No, I just live slower than most people. They both laughed at that, and the sound was warm enough to fill the empty restaurant. When she finally stood to leave, Nathan looked at her and said, You make silence feel different. Not empty, just quiet. Her heart fluttered, though she didn't understand why. She smiled faintly. Good night, Nathan. The next few days, they crossed paths more often. Sometimes in the morning when she came early, sometimes at night when he returned from meetings. It wasn't planned, but it felt almost like fate. Each encounter carried a quiet tension neither of them named. One afternoon, a storm rolled in from the ocean. Heavy rain lashed the glass walls, and the lobby emptied as guests stayed inside their rooms. Emma stood by the reception desk, organizing papers when Nathan appeared again. You should go home before it gets worse, he said. I can't. My shift isn't over. Then I'll wait until it is. You don't have to wait for me. I'm not waiting for you, he said softly. I'm waiting with you. She looked up at him, startled by the honesty in his voice. For the first time, she saw him not as a billionaire or a man of power, but as someone simply trying to be near her. They sat together on the lobby sofa while the rain thundered outside. The power flickered, and the only light came from a lamp near the window. Nathan told her about the first company he built, the failures before success, the people who left when he had nothing. Emma listened quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning when he spoke about the loneliness of success. Money buys walls, he said finally, but not warmth. She nodded slowly. Maybe you just need to open the door, and what if no one comes in? Then you keep it open anyway. Someone will, someday. Nathan looked at her, really looked at her, and something changed in his eyes. You talk like you've seen the world. No, she said softly. I just pay attention. The thunder outside echoed softly through the walls. Emma shivered slightly, and without thinking, Nathan took off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. She froze, her breath catching. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded.
Ouch. You don't have to thank me for kindness. It's just something I forgot how to give.
For a long time, they said nothing more. The rain softened, turning into a steady rhythm, and when the clock neared midnight, Nathan finally stood. Do you need a ride home? She shook her head. I take the bus, then I'll drive you. You don't have to, I know, he said again. With that same quiet insistence, the drive through the rain was silent at first. The city lights blurred across the windshield. Emma watched the drops race down the glass, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She felt small in his expensive car, surrounded by quiet luxury. "Are you always this calm?" he asked suddenly. She smiled faintly. No. "I just don't show when I'm not. It's dangerous. People might think you don't feel anything." "I feel too much," she admitted softly. "That's why I stay quiet." Nathan glanced at her, something like understanding flickering in his expression. "Maybe that's what drew me to you," he said quietly. Her heart skipped. "Drew you?" He didn't answer right away. "You look at the world like it still surprises you. Most people stop doing that." She didn't know what to say, so she just looked out the window. When they reached her small apartment building near the docks, she turned to thank him. But before she could, he said, "Emma, can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why do you look away every time I look at you?" She hesitated, caught off guard. "Because I don't know what you'll see." "And what do you think I'll see?" "Someone ordinary," she whispered. He smiled gently. "Then maybe I've been searching for ordinary all this time." She froze, unsure if she should laugh or cry. For a moment, neither moved. The sound of rain filled the car, and when she finally reached for the door handle, he said softly, "Emma." She turned. His voice was low, almost a murmur. "I don't know what this is, but I don't want it to end tonight." She swallowed hard, her heart beating fast. "Neither do I," she whispered. But she opened the door anyway, stepping out into the rain. As she walked toward the building, she looked back once. He was still there, watching her through the misty glass. For the first time in years, Nathan Cross felt something break open inside him. Not control, not power. Something gentler, something he didn't understand. Emma climbed the stairs to her apartment. Her uniform still damp, her pulse still racing. She pressed her hand against her chest, trying to calm the storm inside her. She didn't know if she was scared or alive for the first time, and neither of them knew that night. It was only the beginning of a story that would change them both forever. The next morning came quietly. With sunlight spilling through the thin curtains of Emma's small apartment, the world outside still smelled of rain. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. Sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face, the way his voice softened when he said her name. The warmth in his eyes when he told her he didn't want the night to end. It made no sense. He was a billionaire, a man who lived in a world built on speed, control, and precision. She was a hotel receptionist barely making rent. They should have remained a brief coincidence, 2 lines crossing once before parting again. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had started, something fragile but real at the resort. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The marble floors still gleamed, the scent of lilies still filled the lobby. But Emma felt the air thicken every time she thought she might see him again. For 2 days he didn't appear. No phone calls, no visits to the desk, not even a glimpse of him crossing the lobby. She told herself that was good, he was probably busy, back to his real life. But every time the elevator bell chimed, her heart still lifted before falling again. On the 3rd night, she found a small envelope waiting for her at the desk, addressed to her name in careful handwriting. Inside was a card embossed with the resort's logo. It read, "I'll be at the charity event on Saturday evening. I'd like you to come not as staff, as my guest." Emma stared at it for a long moment, her hands trembling. Her first thought was to refuse. She wasn't someone who belonged at events where people wore diamonds and spoke in riddles about investments and art collections. But something inside her whispered, "Go." Maybe curiosity, maybe hope. Saturday arrived faster than she expected. Her aunt helped her find a dress, a soft cream one that reached her knees, simple but elegant. She tied her hair loosely and wore a small pendant that had belonged to her mother. It was the only piece of jewelry she owned that carried meaning. When she arrived at the event hall, she almost turned back. The ballroom glowed under golden chandeliers. It's filled with laughter, polished shoes, and champagne glasses clinking like tiny bells. Everyone looked perfect, confident, practiced. She felt small, out of place. Then she saw him. Nathan stood near the far wall, talking to a group of investors. He wore a dark suit that fit like it had been made for him. But what caught her wasn't the suit, it was the way his expression changed when he noticed her. For a brief second, his eyes softened completely, as if the room around them disappeared. He excused himself from the conversation and crossed the floor toward her. People turned to look, not because of him, but but because of the way he looked at her. You came, he said, smiling. You invited me, she replied quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, and now that you're here, I'm still deciding, he laughed, and the sound eased her tension. He offered his arm. Walk with me. They moved through the crowd, passing tables covered with white linens and silver trays. Nathan nodded politely to a few guests, but his focus never left her. They stopped near the balcony where the noise faded, placed by the distant sound of the sea. I didn't want to come, she admitted after a while. I don't belong here. That's not true, he said softly. You belong anywhere you choose to stand. She shook her head. You don't understand? People like me don't just walk into rooms like this. He turned to face her. Then maybe rooms like this need more people like you. The honesty in his tone made her chest tighten. They stood in silence, the wind from the open doors brushing against her hair. She looked out at the dark sea, glittering under the city lights. You always sound like you've already thought about what to say, she said finally. He smiled faintly. Maybe I think too much. Or maybe I just think too much about you. She looked away, pretending to watch the waves, but her heart was racing. After a while, the music inside changed, a slow, soft piano melody. He looked at her again. Dance with me. I don't know how. Neither do I. We'll learn together. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. He guided her gently to the center of the floor. His hand rested lightly on her waist, his other holding hers as they moved awkwardly at first, then slowly finding rhythm. She couldn't look at him directly. Every time their eyes met, it felt like the world blurred. You're shaking, he murmured. I'm not used to this. To what? Being seen. He smiled faintly. Then maybe that's what I'm here for. Her heart skipped. She wanted to speak, but words failed. They danced quietly, and for a few minutes, nothing else existed. Not the people, not the music, not the world beyond the light of that room. Only the warmth of his hand and the calm in his eyes. Later that night, after the event ended, Nathan offered to drive her home again. This time she didn't refuse. The car moved through the sleeping streets. The silence between them was different, not heavy. It's just full of unspoken thoughts. When they reached her street, she didn't open the door right away. Instead, she turned to him. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? You could have anyone, and yet you keep showing up here. He looked ahead for a moment before answering. Because you don't want anything from me? And that scares me more than anything else. She frowned softly. Why would that scare you? Because it means I could lose you and never be able to buy you back. She stared at him, not sure what to say. He turned to her, his eyes searching. Emma, I've met thousands of people. None of them made me want to start over. But you, he stopped, exhaling slowly. You make me want to remember who I was before all this. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. She whispered, You don't even know me. Then let me try. The simplicity of that sentence broke something inside her. She felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them away. I'm not what you think I am, she said quietly. I don't know how to be what people expect. I don't know how to make love or play the games that people play. His expression softened completely. Emma, he said gently, I'm not asking you to know. I'm asking you to feel. The way he said it, calm, sincere, made her breath catch. He leaned slightly closer, but didn't touch her. Love isn't about knowing what to do, he said quietly. It's about being brave enough to feel it, even when you're scared. For a moment, the air felt charged, full of something bigger than either of them. She finally opened the door, her voice barely above a whisper. Good night, Nathan, he smiled faintly. Good night, Emma. She stepped out, and before she closed the door, he said, I meant what I said. I'll try, for as long as you let me. The days that followed blurred into quiet anticipation. They started meeting more often, a walk along the pier on her day off, a cup of coffee before his meetings. Stolen minutes between two different worlds. Sometimes they talked about simple things, like her favorite books or his travels. Other times, the conversations ran deeper, about fear, loneliness, and how both of them had spent years pretending they were fine. Nathan learned that Emma wrote in secret, small stories she never showed anyone. Emma learned that despite his success, Nathan carried guilt for every person he'd lost along the way. One evening, as they sat by the water, the sky fading into pink and gold, he asked her quietly, Do you ever wish your life was different? She thought for a moment. Sometimes. But if it had been different, I might never have met you, he smiled. That sounds like something you'd write. Maybe, she said softly. But it's true. He looked at her for a long moment, and she could feel the question in his eyes, the one he didn't dare ask. After a while, he said, you still think you don't know how to love? She nodded slightly. I think I only know how to care. Then maybe that's what love really is, he said quietly. Caring until it changes everything. Her hands brushed, fingers barely touching. But neither pulled away. As weeks passed, their bond grew, but so did the whispers. The resort staff began to notice the glances. The quiet smiles exchanged at the front desk. The car waiting outside for her after every late shift. Rumors travel faster than truth, and soon, people started talking. Emma tried to ignore it. She told herself it didn't matter what anyone thought. But deep down, it hurt. She had worked hard to be respected, to be seen for her effort, not her association with a rich man. One evening, while she was finishing reports, 2 employees walked past, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. She must be smart, one said. Imagine catching a man like that. Lucky, you mean? The other replied. Laughing, their voices faded. But the sting stayed. When Nathan appeared at the counter later that night, she forced a smile. He noticed immediately. What's wrong? Nothing, she said quickly. Emma? His voice softened. Please. She sighed. People are talking. About us. He frowned. Let them talk. It's not that simple. They'll think I'm using you, and are you? She looked at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. No, then we don't owe them an explanation. She wanted to believe that, but her world wasn't his. In her world, whispers could take away everything she'd worked for. He reached across the counter, his fingers brushing hers. Don't let them make you small, he said softly. You're stronger than that. She tried to smile, but her voice trembled. You make it sound easy? It isn't, he said, but it's worth it. Their eyes met, and the noise of the world faded again. That weekend, Nathan asked her to join him for a short trip, just one night away from everything. They drove to a small coastal villa an hour from the city, a place where the sky touched the water and the world seemed softer. The evening was quiet, filled with the hum of crickets and the distant sound of waves. They sat on the porch, the moonlight washing over them. Emma spoke first. It's strange, isn't it? How fast everything can change. What do you mean? A few months ago I was invisible. Now I feel like everyone sees me, and I don't know if that's a good thing. He looked at her for a moment. People see what they want to see. I see who you are, just smiled faintly. And who am I? Someone who reminds me that love doesn't have to be loud. The words hung in the air, gentle but powerful. She hesitated, then said quietly, Nathan, I'm scared. I don't know how to be what you need. He reached for her hand, his voice calm. I don't need perfection, Emma. I just need real. And you're the most real person I've ever known. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. You make it sound like love is easy. It isn't, he said softly. But with you, it finally feels honest. They sat there in silence, the sea whispering beneath the stars. The world had stopped again, and for once, she didn't feel small or unworthy. She felt alive, fragile, uncertain, but alive. When he finally leaned closer, his voice was a whisper against the night air. If you don't know how to make love, Emma, he said gently, then let me show you what love feels like first. She closed her eyes, her heart trembling, and for the first time, she didn't look away. That night didn't end in fire or fantasy. It ended in stillness, 2 people sitting side by side, learning that love begins not in the touch, but in the quiet courage to stay when everything inside you says to run. Outside, the tide rolled in softly, and the stars burned slow and patient above them. And somewhere between the heartbeat of the ocean and the rhythm of their breaths, something wordless passed between them, not a promise. Not yet, but the beginning of one. Morning came slowly, brushing soft gold light across the sea outside Nathan's villa. Gulls called somewhere distant, and the scent of salt filled the air. Emma stirred in the armchair by the window, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself. She had fallen asleep there, half sitting, half dreaming. Her thoughts tangled between fear and warmth. She turned her head and saw Nathan asleep on the sofa, still in the clothes from last night. his hand resting near his temple, his breathing steady. He looked different this way, not the powerful man from glossy magazines or television interviews, but human, quiet, even vulnerable. For a long moment, she just watched him. It felt wrong and right all at once, like standing at the edge of something vast and not knowing whether to step forward or turn back. When he finally woke, his voice was rough with sleep. "You didn't go to bed?" She shook her head, smiling softly. "I didn't want to wake you." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You should have." "I'd have moved." "No," she said, still smiling. "You looked peaceful." "I don't imagine that happens often." He laughed quietly. "Not since I built the company. Peace has been something I only find in rare moments." She looked down at her hands. "And last night," he said gently, "was the first time I felt peace in years." Silence fell between them again. Not awkward, but heavy with meaning. Neither dared to speak yet. Later that morning, they walked along the beach together. The waves lapped softly at their feet, and the sun was pale behind a veil of clouds. Emma carried her shoes in one hand, the hem of her dress brushing the water. Nathan walked beside her, jacket off, sleeves rolled, his gaze more on her than on the horizon. "Do you regret coming here?" he asked suddenly. She thought about it before answering. "No, but I'm afraid of what comes after, because of what people will say. Partly, but mostly because I don't know how to exist in your world, Nathan. It feels like a place where I don't belong." He nodded slowly. "Then let me build a place where you do." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "You can't build that. You can't buy it either. Love doesn't work like your business. It's messy. It doesn't follow logic." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I need it," she sighed, looking at the sea again. "You don't understand. I don't know how to stay when things get complicated." He stepped closer, his voice calm but certain. "Then I'll wait when you need to walk away. I'll learn your pace." The way he said it, quiet without demand, broke something inside her again. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that someone like him could mean what he said, but the world wasn't as gentle as the waves around them. A week later, the headlines began. Photographs of Nathan and Emma walking by the pier appeared online with careless captions. "Billionaire caught in secret romance with hotel employee." Some called her the mystery girl. Others were less kind. Emma read the articles sitting on her small bed, her hands trembling. She felt exposed, like someone had ripped the quiet safety from her life and turned it into gossip. When Nathan arrived at her apartment that evening, she didn't let him speak first. "You said you could handle this," she said quietly. "But I can't, Emma. Everyone's talking about me. My coworkers, neighbors, people I don't even know. They've turned me into something I'm not." "I'll fix it," he said immediately, his voice steady, but his eyes tired. She shook her head. "You can't fix everything. Not this." He stepped forward. "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to make it right." She looked up at him, tears welling. "I just want my life back. Before all of this..." He froze. "And me." Her voice cracked. "You were never supposed to be part of my life, Nathan. You were supposed to be a story I told myself at night and forgot in the morning." His shoulders fell slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "Then why does it hurt to hear you say that?" "Because it hurts me too," she whispered. They stood there, two worlds colliding in silence, until she finally looked away. "I think we need time." He nodded slowly. "If that's what you need, 'tis." He didn't argue. He just looked at her one last time, memorizing the softness of her face, and then turned and left. The sound of the door closing was soft, but it echoed inside her chest for hours. Weeks passed. The resort continued its rhythm without him. Guests came and went. The sea kept breathing against the shore. But Emma felt a quiet absence everywhere she went. She tried to convince herself it was better this way, that she had protected herself, kept her world from breaking apart completely. And yet, at night, she would catch herself glancing at her phone, half hoping for a message that never came. Until one afternoon, a small envelope arrived. No return address, only her name in familiar handwriting. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, written in blue ink. "Emma, I've spent years believing that control was strength. That to build a perfect life, I had to silence everything that felt uncertain. But since the day I met you, I've learned that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from truth. You told me you didn't know how to make love. I think I didn't either. Because love isn't learned, it's found in the moments when we stop trying to understand and simply feel. I don't know where you are tonight, but if you still believe in what we felt, come to the cafe by the pier. The one where you said the sea feels like home. I'll be there at sunset. Nathan, her hands trembled as she folded the letter back. She didn't think. She just moved, grabbed her coat, locked the door, and ran toward the pier. The cafe was nearly empty, filled with the golden glow of the setting sun. Through the wide windows, the sea shimmered, calm and endless. Nathan sat at the corner table. No suit this time, just a simple shirt. Sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly tousled. He looked up the moment she entered. For a long moment, neither spoke. She walked slowly toward him, her heart pounding. "You came," he said quietly. "You asked," she replied. He smiled faintly. "I didn't know if you'd still want to see me." "I didn't know either," she admitted. They sat across from each other, silence stretching between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said. "Emma," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I won't lie. Losing you made me realize how much of my life I'd been pretending to live. I thought love was about passion or control, but it's not. It's about peace. And peace is what I found with you." She looked down, blinking back tears. "You always know what to say."
Healthy.
"I just know what I feel." She met his eyes then. "I was scared, Nathan. I thought love would make me smaller, that it would take away who I am. And now, I think love is what helps you become who you are," she whispered. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles softly. "Then let's stop trying to be who the world expects and just be who we are. Two people who found each other when they weren't supposed to." Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You really think it can work? You and me?" He smiled, not the confident smile of a man used to winning, but the quiet one of someone who finally understood humility. "It already does. We just have to stop running from it." They left the cafe together, walking along the wooden pier as the sun melted into the horizon. The sea wind wrapped around them, carrying the scent of salt and light. Emma leaned against the railing, watching the waves. "When you said you wanted more than one night," she said softly, "I thought you meant something else." "Maybe I did," he replied, smiling. "But now, I mean every night. Every morning. Every version of life we can build." She laughed quietly, wiping her eyes. "You sound so sure." "I'm not," he said honestly. "But I'm sure of you." She turned toward him, and in that golden light, everything else faded. The noise, the judgment, the fear. She stepped closer, and he reached for her hand, their fingers fitting as if they'd always belonged. "This time," she said quietly, "I don't want to be afraid." "Then don't be," he whispered. "Just stay," she nodded. And when he leaned in, their kiss wasn't the desperate kind from movies or dreams. It was slow, real, the kind that spoke of all the things they'd learned: patience, forgiveness, the courage to begin again. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, they stood there, two silhouettes against the fading light, a billionaire who had forgotten how to feel, and a girl who had never believed she could be loved. And for the first time, both knew they had found what they'd been searching for. Not perfection, not forever, but truth, and that truth was enough. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to share the story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.